a public consultation session on the Market Wharf design on Wednesday, February 17th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Recording of attendance, I note that all members of council are in attendance, as well as our Chief Administrative Officer, Chris Spear, and our Clerk and Senior Administrator, Paul Knopper. And I don't know if anyone from the Planning Department is here or not, but if they are, welcome. And I will now move to a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. And a seconder? Councillor Grew, thank you. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. I will now look to disclosure of conflict of interest on any matter before council at this meeting. Hearing none, we move ahead. We go to introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions. PED 2001, the Market Wharf design concepts. The Town of St. Andrews will be presenting information on several Market Wharf design concepts, costing, and life cycles. The public is encouraged to participate and provide feedback. This is the second public consultation session and the proposed Market Wharf designs. The first session was held on Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. Copies of the presentation are available at www.townofstandrews.ca on the right side of the main page under featured documents. The document is titled Town of St. Andrews Wharf Presentation, January 20th, 2021. Before we get started, and I asked Mr. Spear to make a short presentation, it occurred to me that there are probably some people who may be on tonight who weren't part of the same consultation. So we will go through the presentation, and before I turn this over to Mr. Knopper at the end of the presentation to offer people in to make their comments, I would just ask that people restrict themselves to the 5-minute limit that we set, which ensures that everyone who wants to say something or get connected to council has that opportunity. And to assure everyone that has already written in or sent emails that members of council have received all of that documentation, as have senior staff, and all of that will be considered. So it really is not necessary to read your 12-page submission in 5 minutes. We would ask that you summarize and hit the high points if possible. One other thing, and it has nothing to do with this consultation, but the last consultation which council conducted about a week ago or a little more, was not satisfactory from our point of view or from the point of view of some councillors. There was some contention that was present at that meeting. It's fine for everyone to disagree and have a different opinion about what should go forward in terms of policy for the municipality. It's not fair and not reasonable to make unfounded allegations about graft and corruption amongst council when there is absolutely no evidence of that. I can assure you that on this matter and any others, no member of council has made a decision, no votes have been taken in secret, and these issues are still to be decided, and that's why we're asking for your input. So I appreciate everyone being involved, and we'd like to make as much room as possible for everyone who has something to say something to council. So, Mr. Spear, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just be a moment. This presentation is a bit different than the presentation given last week, but it's a lot of the same information. So, Paul, can you confirm, can you see the presentation screen?
Not yet.
What do you see? Oh,
I just see the regular council screen.
Okay.
There you go.
Sorry, jump to the
Yep, you're good, Chris.
PowerPoint view screen. Is just a minute.
Yeah, it's just in the PowerPoint view
Sorry,
screen.
sorry, folks, I can't. All right, I can't see the same screen as you guys, so if I get ahead of myself, let me know. So good afternoon and good evening, everybody in council. Thank you once again for attending the second public presentation on the Wharf renovation project. This is an exciting opportunity for the town to update an aging facility, and I think it's important that council has brought it back to the public for their views on different options that we're looking at. The original and probably most controversial option, being the rock infill, has actually been in the public domain for a couple of years now. And just through recently finding out that we may be eligible for a grant that could help this project proceed, is that it's been rebrought forward, dusted off, and now up for public discussion about how to best move forward for the town of St. Andrews. So I just got to confirm, Paul, does it say purpose of meeting?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I'm good now. So the purpose of the meeting is to to explain why council feels the need to invest in the wharf. We're also going to discuss the funding, which has become of some concern to some residents about the sheer scope of the project and the cost. We are going to once again review the options and discuss them a little more. But the most important thing is that the purpose of this meeting is to get public input into it. That council knew that this is going to be a legacy project that was outlast most of us, whether it's in our lifespan or at least in our service to the town of St. Andrews. And so everyone wanted to make sure that this is what is best for the community moving forward for the next several decades. So there's no doubt how important the wharf is to St. Andrews. The number one thing that has come across by a lot of people is that it is part of the seaside community heritage. As a town adjacent to the Bay of Fundy, and the wharf is vitally important as a common meeting point, as an area that it's part of the architectural history of the area, and also as a reflection of historical history. It used to be a fisheries and boat building area, and continue important today. Of course, it's an economic driver with the tour boat industry, traditional fishery and aquaculture industry all working off of the wharf. And not mentioned here, which is a smaller revenue generator, but important to the Bay of Fundy region too, of course, is that we're a gateway for smaller cruise ships that come into the area. And so this is important to the Cruise Association, as St. Andrews is one of the key destinations with 2 or 3 others. And part of our funding in the past has been keeping that channel open. And although this year and last year we've lost all cruise ships, it will likely pick up again in 2022. Of course, it's also a key place for pleasure boaters, many of whom don't live in St. Andrews and come from other areas, spending their money here as well as investing in the wharf through their user fees. And pleasure boaters also include those that travel by a private boat up and down the shore and come into St. Andrews, call home. The St. Andrews Yacht Club has also had regattas with several dozen boats coming into the harbor. And so it's an important element to the character and livelihood of the town in the summer. And despite whether or not you're actual an on-water user, it is a meeting place within the community. Before there's Tim Hortons, before there's Honey Beans, there's the wharf at the end of St. Andrews, including with a coffee pot and a collection jar. So we understand that as much in the lifeblood of the community as any other asset within the town. So the original facility was built in the 1970s, a wooden construction with rock ballast, and all the rock ballast are big wooden boxes underneath, what you see have large stones there that act as support for the wharf. Due to the shallow rock bed in the harbor there isn't much digging that have gone too deep for that. And so I won't say that the structure's floating, but it's not dug into the bedrock as deep as somebody might think. But the important thing to understand is that it was originally built and maintained up until the mid-90s as a Government of Canada owned and operated facility. And so they had substantially more money to do it. And we're one of only 2 or 3 municipalities in all that actually own our own municipal wharf and have to carry the burden of maintaining an asset that is under severe abuse from the tides. Then it spoke, as everyone knows that has a history to the town, that in 1994 there's a severe fire at the end of the wharf. It destroyed both the Pier Head and much of the intermediate, which is the difference between the approach to the wharf, which comes from the land and goes out about 100 meters, and the next 100 meters is what we call the intermediate trestle area, which we'll talk about in the future. Now, the wharf was completed around 1996. The Pier Head was replaced with steel and cement. The midsection is wood and cement, but the original approach was barely touched. It had some cosmetic changes, but it's still primarily the wooden structure from the 1950s, with the only difference being there's now a cement surface on top for vehicles and pedestrians. Now, a lot of that drove this was back in 2018, we had a report commissioned by CBCL for the Walkaround, and I can't remember the dates, but I think it was 2016 or 2017 in the summer. It was determined that there were some faults in the approach that had to be addressed right away. And at that point in time, we actually had to put a fairly severe weight restrictions on the wharf. And so following that, we had CBCL do a full review of the wharf and provide us with the detailed information of what really should be replaced. And people didn't really appreciate that the approach was still the original wharf, but a lot of people, including staff, are under the impression that was the original, that the whole structure had been replaced in the 90s, and it definitely wasn't. So within the engineering report, there were several deficiencies to address over the next 5 years. Now that's important. It's only a 5-year interval was only the scope that we asked for. The approach, which is the part we're talking about tonight, we had to replace wheel guards, the ballast boxes, which are those underneath, the deck boards and trestle posts. It was a cost of over $500,000 just to do that work. And again, even though that wouldn't return the wharf to a fully usable state for the next 50 years, that was just repairing key elements in order to maintain the wharf moving forward. And so there could be hundreds of thousands of dollars every 3 to 5 years that are going to have to be continuously invested in there to completely restore that structure to a safe format that wouldn't require minimal investment moving forward. The next part is the intermediate trestle. That's really the new cement and wooden part, which you can tell if you're walking along the wharf, you'll see the cement will change color into the newer part. And up until the Pier Head, the big part of that is their trestle bracing, which is a lot of the wooden structures underneath. It's not so much as the outer post, but it's a lot of the horizontal and vertical bracing and diagonal bracing that needs to be replaced in order to maintain that structure for decades to go. In that particular section, that had to be repairs of about $588,000 to be done by 2023. Now, another big cost item is on the Pier Head, and one of them, and the most expensive, is to encapsulate the H-piles in the splash zone. So to say that in English, the Pier Head, as you know, is built by steel piles, which the deck is on. There are currently anodes on all the piles, but unfortunately, those only protect the portion of the posts that are underwater. Anything above water is exposed to rust at the same level as if it didn't have the anodes. And for anyone that has had a look at low tide, you'll see that it's deteriorating and that they're losing width on the steel posts, should say. So essentially, we're going to be putting a coating, if all approved, over all of those, or most of those, and to assure that we have decades of more use on the Pier Head and the structure that's there. So when the original application was put into the Infrastructure Canada Fund back in 2009, it was made up of the following. That to replace the approach was $3.2 to $3.5 million. At the time, we actually did only apply after having 1 or 2 consultation meetings for the infill, but we've been approved that as long as we meet the newest conditions of the fund, they're okay with us changing that design. To restore the intermediate structure, as talked about before, $588,000. To restore the Pier Head, it's $674,000. And then to rebuild Market Square, $340,000. So that hasn't been talked about as much, but as many of you know, the wooden seawall along Market Square is deteriorating badly, that we've had to put weight restrictions on the boardwalk itself. And so the total cost of the project is, depending on what choices council makes, is going to be between $4.8 and $5.1 million. So as mentioned, we have a funding partner who's come forward, being a level of the Government of Canada, but that funding is under review. It's not guaranteed, but we have been put forward for consideration. And from my understanding, if we meet most of the criteria of the fund, we should be approved. They're going to cover about 80% of the project, so in round dollars, $4 million. That leaves the town of St. Andrews on the